Good morning, my little Sunday morning littles. I hope that you've had a great week, and I hope that you had an opportunity to watch our lesson last week about Moses. And we've kind of started a new series of lessons. These are on Moses. He was a wonderful man of God, just like Joseph was. And the thing that I want you to take away from these lessons are the fact that God made us just like them for a specific purpose. And he saw Joseph all the way through his lifetime for his purpose. And he is seeing Moses through his lifetime for his purpose as well. And I want you to try your best to apply that to your little lives as you think about what your purpose was or will be in this lifetime. So today we're going to continue on with Moses, and we're going to start with the lesson titled No Shoes Allowed. And I don't know about you, but I don't like to wear shoes, especially when I'm at home. And right now, I'm sitting at my kitchen table recording this little Sunday school lesson for you, and I don't have any shoes on. I don't like to wear shoes around my house, but this story is unique in the fact that God tells Moses to take his shoes off because he is on holy ground. Oh my. Now, we've talked a little bit about this particular event in the Bible before. We've talked a little bit about it in our Sunday school class, but I wanted to go ahead and add it to this series of lessons so you could kind of remember exactly who's involved in this and exactly what this particular lesson signifies. Okay, so we see a picture of a tree here, and that tree appears to be on fire, and it doesn't look like it's burning up. Now, when something burns, it normally turns into just a pile of ashes. But that's not the case with the burning bush that Moses encountered. Okay, so the title of this lesson is called No Shoes Allowed, and we are still in the book of Exodus, right? Okay, now in our last lesson, Moses was found floating on the river by Pharaoh's daughter. She raised him in the palace as an Egyptian, and when he became a young man, he longed to go back to his native homeland, and he felt deep sorrow for the Israelites who were in bondage in Egypt. Now, this is, of course, well after the time of Joseph, and so the Israelites who are there are in bondage. They're in slavery. And Moses didn't like that. He didn't like what was being done to the Israelites. And those were his native people. Remember, he was being raised as an Egyptian just because he was found by Pharaoh's daughter. But he wasn't a true Egyptian. And so he longed to help his fellow men who were in bondage there. Now, this little picture just kind of shows what it may have been like to be in bondage. But as Moses grew, he really began to hate the way that the Israelites were treated. And little did Moses know that God was preparing him for a journey of a lifetime in leading his people out of Egypt and into the promised land. God had a plan for Moses from the very start. According to the evil Pharaoh, all Hebrew baby boys were to be killed. Yet Moses' mother was determined through God's help for her baby boy to live, and he did. God had big things planned for Moses. He did. So think about that. When he was a little bitty baby, God already had it planned out. He already had everything planned out for him, for Moses. And he was able to live and not die like the Pharaoh had ordered baby boys to do. Moses eventually married and became a shepherd to his father-in-law Jethro. Moses was having an ordinary day tending his flock as he did every other day. It is during this mundane, ordinary task within his ordinary day that God shows up and Moses takes notice. So Moses had become a shepherd He had married and he had a family, and he became a shepherd for his father-in-law, Jethro. And, that was just a mundane, ordinary job. There wasn't anything fancy about it. That's what that word means. There's not anything fancy about it. Nothing really special about it. He was out tending his sheep. It was a meek and mild job, and you hear that a lot in Bible times. And all of a sudden, God shows up, and Moses takes notice. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of a bush. He looked, and the bush was blazing, yet it was not consumed. And that means that it was burning, and burning in a big, big blaze or flame. But it wasn't burning up. It wasn't being consumed. Then Moses said, I must turn aside and look at this great sight, and see why the bush is not burned up. When the Lord saw that he had turned aside to see, God called to him out of the bush, saying, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here I am. Now, God comes to us during our mundane tasks within our ordinary days, and he calls us by name to unexpected and extraordinary opportunities to join God in God's work. So you may be having what you feel like is an ordinary day. You may be playing with some of your friends, or you may be in school or whatever, and you feel like you're just having another ordinary day. But you know what? You could be called for a purpose. Just as little as you are, you could be called for a purpose. So always be on the lookout and always be listening. Your purpose on any given day could just be kind to one another, or just be kind to someone who's having a bad day. So always, always be watching and be very vigilant and be thinking about what God wants you to do. He may not show up in a burning bush to you, but he'll show up and show you what he wants for you to do. Okay? Right. Then he said, Come no closer. Now this is God talking to Moses through this burning bush. Come no closer, but remove the sandals from your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. He said further that I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. Now Moses has come to realize that he is in the presence of God. He's in the presence of God, and he's standing on holy ground. And he hides his face because he was afraid to look on God. We're just ordinary people. We're just ordinary people trying to make it in this mundane and ordinary world. But when God speaks to us, we need to listen. Just because Moses hid his face doesn't mean he couldn't hear. He could hear what God was saying. He just trembled at the extreme awesomeness of God's presence. We need to be like that. We need to be so in awe of his presence. And Moses was. Now God commanded him at that time, take your shoes off. You're standing on holy ground. Wow, you imagine? I've got my shoes off right now, but I don't think my home is holy ground. Now, what makes this mountain the spot of the wilderness where Moses was holy? It was just an ordinary wilderness. It was just a sandy, barren area with a bush there that was burning. It wasn't anything special, but it was made holy by God's presence. And Moses' awareness of that presence makes it holy ground. It makes it sacred and hallowed and blessed. And our world can be sacred and hallowed and blessed if we acknowledge the presence of God in it, It is not the uniqueness of the ground or the location, but rather the relationship between God and Moses that makes it special. So we don't have to be standing on rich brown dirt that grows really good crops, and we don't have to be standing high up on top of a mountaintop, and we don't even have to be standing in a creek bed. We just need to be standing anywhere but being aware of how awesome God is, and that makes the place that we are holy ground. That kind of gives me chills. God comes to Moses, and Moses is directed to take off his shoes in recognition of this holy space. Now, taking off your shoes is kind of like act of respect or reverence. I know your sweet little moms do not want you to bring or to come into their house with dirty shoes on and track up their floor. I'm sure that if you've been in a big squishy mud puddle outside, your mommy's going to make you take your shoes off. So sometimes you have to think of taking your shoes off as just a sign of respect. You don't want to track in or get dirty things that might be on your shoes in someone's home. And it doesn't have to just be your home. It could be someone else's home. So think about, do you ever take your shoes off when you go into your house or someone else's house? Just out of respect and just out of reverence for them. Well, out of the respect that Moses had for God and the awesomeness of that particular moment, he was directed to take his shoes off or his sandals off. Now, can you imagine how Moses felt when he heard these words? And then the Lord said, I have observed the misery of my people who are in Egypt. So now I put more of a real-to-life picture here because I like the way you can see how barren and dusty the land is. It's not any special place. It's just a mundane and ordinary barren land. But yet there is a bush that's consumed by fire, but yet not burning out, not burning to the ground. Yeah. And look at Moses' hands in this picture. I mean, it's like he sees the awe and the splendor of it all. And the Lord's speaking to him. And he's telling him that he's observed the misery of the people who are in Egypt. And he has heard their cry on account of their taskmasters. You know, they were made to work hard by the Egyptian people. And they were in slavery, they were in bondage, and they wanted out. And God had heard their cry. So indeed I know their sufferings, he said, and I've come down to deliver them from the Egyptians and to bring them up out of that land to a good and broad land and a land that's flowing with milk and honey, to the country of the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Amorites and the Hivites and all of these different people. God was going to bring them out into this land flowing with milk and honey. The cry of the Israelites has come to me, and I have also seen how the Egyptians have oppressed them. So come, and I will send you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. So through this burning bush, God tells Moses, he's the chosen one. He's the one that's to bring God's people out of bondage, out of the land where the Egyptians have oppressed them and treated them so badly, made them work and really labor all this time. But God's going to bring them out, and he has chosen Moses to do that. Now think back to the time when Pharaoh said, there's no baby boys going to live. No baby boys are going to live. But God had a plan, and that plan was for Moses to live, and he did. He did live. Yeah. So think about all of the time that's passed, and Moses is being chosen just for a time like this. It's amazing. Moses was accompanied by Aaron as he traveled to Egypt to speak to the Pharaoh and demand that he let God's people go. He had stressed to God he wasn't a very good speaker, and he feared that Pharaoh wouldn't listen to him. But God had prepared Moses for such a time as this. You know, we can come up with all kinds of excuses, but if we've been made for a certain purpose, then we need to listen and follow through with that purpose. We can probably come up with a bazillion excuses for something that we don't want to do, but sometimes it's not really all about what we want to do. It's what we've been called to do or what we've been shown we need to do. So has God put you in a situation that you think is well beyond your little lives? I mean, each and every day, littles, you make a choice as to whether you're going to be kind and respectful to people or whether you're not going to be, and you're going to be hateful and maybe mean or ugly, even if it's just to a family member. You know, you were created for a purpose. And that purpose right now in your little lives is to show Jesus as much as you possibly can. So remember, you're fearfully and wonderfully made, and you were made for your own unique purpose. God chose that purpose, not you. So I want you to stand tall with your shoulders back, littles, because through God, you can be fearless. Now, Moses had a certain degree of fear in him, but it wasn't a fear of being scared. It was a fear of the awesomeness and just the awe that he was standing within the presence of God. So you're fearfully and wonderfully made just like that. You are. And you were made for a very unique purpose. And until you grow up a little bit more and you really see as you get older what your purpose in this life is, then I want you to purpose to do the best that you can as you get to that age. Do the best that you can to show people that you know Jesus. And you're not afraid because you're fearfully and wonderfully made by Him for a purpose that is well beyond your years. Okay? Now, I know that that's a lot of big words for you. That is. But I want you to think Moses started out as a baby, just like you did. Yeah, he started out little and there was a purpose for him. And so when he was placed in that basket, that was to all work out for this purpose that he has here today. Okay. Every time you take your little shoes off, every time you think about, taking them off out of respect or just taking them off because it feels comfortable, think about this story. No shoes were allowed on that holy ground that Moses was standing on. Really true. Now, we've kind of applied this story to our lives a little bit and how we should maybe act and how we should treat other people and things like that. But as we go in to the rest of these lessons, you're going to see that everything wasn't easy for Moses. He had to work hard at this, and he had to be brave because he had all kinds of excuses for not wanting to go down and talk to Pharaoh. But you're going to see that he was a brave man and he did the best that he could to lead God's people. Now, when we go into our lesson next week, we're going to kind of see all of the different things that happened that led up to Pharaoh finally letting God's people go and how hard Moses had to work to get Pharaoh to listen to him and all the things that God had to do to really show Pharaoh that he was in control. And through Moses and Moses' voice to Pharaoh, God showed Pharaoh that he must let his people go. Okay? So we'll learn more about Moses next week and what happens when he does go to Pharaoh. But until that time, I want you to think about this right here. Stand tall. Your shoulders are back, littles, because through God, you can be fearless. Until we meet again here or in our little classroom, know that I love you a bunch and I know that you're fearfully and wonderfully made.